So you let me know because you're starting recording.
We are go. We are a go.
All right. All right. Good night, everybody. Or not good night. Hello. I'll tell you good night at the end. It's just that I'm ready for good night.
It's been a
For
very
sure.
long day for all of us, so you'll have to
Right.
excuse us.
So we're looking at IEPs, individual education plans, part two, because we had so much to cover, we couldn't do it in one webinar. So
So,
I'm Susan Norwell, educational specialist and co-founder of Rett University. Hi, I'm happy to be here.
hi guys, I'm Courtney Burnham. I am the lead administrator for Rett U and educational specialist. Oh, this is going to be bad.
If you don't know who you are, that happens. That happens. Okay, hold on. I got to take off my, let me do my do not disturb for a while here. Till I go.
Go ahead, Lizzie.
There we go. All right, Lizzie.
I'm a speech language pathologist and training coordinator for Rett U.
And now we have our newest person, Olivia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Olivia Samrin. I am a training coach. I'm new.
There you
All
go.
right. And just to let you all know, if you want the first part, if you have not, were not with us last time we did the first part, or if you would like information, it is up on our web chat underneath our free lessons. If you go under web chats, it's right down there. And it is available
So
to
if
you
tell
for
them
free.
where the web chats are, they would be on Rett University.
RettUniversity.org, and you go under coaching, and in there it says free video lessons. And that's where you can find the web chat.
Web chats.
Thank
Right.
you.
Here we go. It's okay. It's all right. Here we go. All right. So now I'm going to turn the page. So we did a lot of talking about goals in general. We talked about SMART goals, just to give a quick recap. And now we're going to talk about the givens when you're writing goals. And so when you're writing goals, if you say, the child will identify the letters A through Z, right? But we really don't know what that's going to look like. The goal should speak to how the setup's going to be. And maybe that's not as important for walking, talking, using their hands kind of kids. But we really have to be specific with Rett because there are very specific, supports that they need that we want to be included. So we want them included in the goals. So the givens, calm, regulated body. I can't tell you the number of times where I've said to teachers, how did you get this data when it's looking really awful? And they say, well, she really had a rough week. She just kept seizing. And so our data is not great. I said, you took data when she's having seizures all week? That's, we would think that would be a given, that you would want the child regulated and not seizing. Seems common sense to me. But I've learned over the years common sense is not so common. So we put in a calm, regulated body. If they're not in that green to good, they're alert, they're calm, they're regulated, they're not having a huge, breathing episode while we're evaluating them. That isn't to say that we have to wait until they're breath holding free. It's just that we're not going to ask them a question when they're in the midst of a breath hold, which seems like common sense. But again, I just have not seen it always the time be so common.
And with that too is we should not have as teachers a specific IEP time planned throughout in our day. Like we do IEP goals from this time to this time. IEP goals should be taken, data should be taken naturally throughout the day because very simple effect is there are a lot of times where maybe if it's in the afternoon for our girls, that might not be their best time. And so if you've got your time planned, we do IEP time at this time, that's not acceptable for any child, to be very honest with you.
And I think that when you are interacting, doing things that they normally do that you're trying to measure, and it's just this nice interaction, that's why I really like videoing all I do, because I can take data after the fact, which not everybody can do in a classroom, but keep what you're collecting data with to the side so that you can mark things down or take pictures of it or something. But I just find that we have to make it feel less like we're giving them a test.
Exactly.
There's no such thing as IEP time. It's the IEP is a measurement of the progress they make while you're instructing them and while they are being assessed. Heavy on the instruction, pretty quiet there and not so much on the testing.
Can I add, as parents, you guys should be able to ask teachers or SLPs, when do you find that my child is the most accurate? Because looking at data when they're taking it throughout the day, they should be able to pinpoint, after lunch, she's really not very accurate. And they should be able to report to say, in the mornings, Lizzie is far more accurate with a receptive language.
Good point.
Before lunch. And so that is a good point to bring up when you're discussing IEP goals and you're checking in on progress, to ask, when is the data being taken and when is accuracy higher?
And that way you can aim for that time, because that's the time. It's not like they should say, well, we should measure across the whole day. Well, okay, but if we know she's tired at that time, then we're actually measuring how tired she is, not how much she can do the task.
Right.
There should be modeling. The child should have access to their soft and high-tech AAC wherever they go, right? That can be given in the goal. You're going to see it later in the accommodations that I wrote. Child will put together 2-3 words, but given modeling, if we never model, they're not going to go from 1-word utterances to 2-word utterances. And so I think that sometimes what we're putting in is the instructional strategies are really going into the goal. Partner assisted scan. How are you asking her to identify 1 out of 3? 1 out of 3 choices, she will identify whatever. Yeah, but how is she identifying it? Is she pointing with her eyes? Is she pointing with her finger? What are they expecting? We at Rett U believe in partner assisted scan because it's the lowest motor demand, and once they learn what a yes no is, it's less of a cognitive load for them to figure out the motor plan, and all they have to do is figure out the content. We talk about something called soft questioning. People tend to, when they're doing measurement or assessment, get into assessment mode, and now they're like, find this, get this, tell me this. Whoa, that's going to get the worst results, because that's too combative and it's too anxiety provoking. And so we're just kind of, what are you thinking? And what do you think this could be? And I kind of need you to find this. I'm working with this kiddo right now who's in first grade, kindergarten, first grade. And I haven't done the training with the classroom teacher yet because just scheduling it didn't work out, but I'm seeing her for 3 hours a week at school. And I have been doing a ton of what I would call assessment, but she doesn't even know it. It just seems really playful and interacting, but I'm finding out what she knows, what she doesn't know. So I can have enough video to show the teacher, this is how you would assess this kid. Because it isn't a given, unfortunately, that everybody knows how to assess a more complex kiddo, because they're pretty much used to asking, LD kids or other kinds of kids, to find something. It's just for our kids, the more they know. I mean, I'll tell my kids, these are the words that are part of your spelling test, and we have to be really careful, and we'll take our time, because if we struggle with these, I have to go back and do some reteaching. I mean, I'll share that with them, not for my real anxious Gerties, I don't, because then they'll be like, peeling them off the wall. But for a lot of my older kids, I do say that, but I'm not like bang and bang and bang and one question after another question after another question. In between the questions, I might chat a little while on their device and then come back to the next question, so they don't feel like I'm, this, I don't know, assessment freak. Basically.
Well, and one of the things too with the givens is a lot of the times, I don't know if Susan has had this, but when I've been in IEP meetings, the districts will kind of fight back and be like, well, those are accommodations. And I do understand that, but I also do believe that they're instructional supports that are going to support our students' learning. And one of the things I've always said is, do we always have time when we get an IEP to look through everything and look through all the accommodations? No, the first thing we look at is the goals. As a teacher, I know for me, for 20 years, if I got a kiddo first thing I got a kiddo came off the bus with a new IEP, I've never met them, I'm going to look at the goals very first. And so having that in there is going to be more supportive and allow the teachers to get to know our kiddos quicker.
Yeah, and I also think it's a good reminder. It's just what we're really asking teachers to do is do things differently than they've been trained. We'll be honest. I mean, Rett is different than every other disability out there, and it's complicated, And what we've learned over, well, what I've learned over 48 years of doing this, what we've all learned together over doing this, is that there are certain ways that work and there are certain ways that don't work. And it would behoove schools to do it the way it does work. And when when you're new to this, you need those reminders right there in the goal to say, I've got to do this. Because the other day when this person told me that they had done it while she was really having a horrible weekend of med change and seizures and all that, I said, well, can you do me a favor and just read me any of the goals? And as they read them, they were like, oh. I said, the first thing is, given a calm, regulated body, if that body's not regulated, don't be measuring goals. And if somebody above you is having trouble with the fact that you didn't do your assessment on Friday like you're supposed to, have them talk to me, because it's not fair to the child and it's not fair to your teaching. You might be doing a really good job teaching, and it's not reflected if you're going to be assessing her when she's had a med change and she's either seizing or asleep. One or the other is what happens when you have a med change. Right. So this is kind of like our standard boilerplate kind of a given. Given a calm, regulated body, good positioning, and access to both soft and high-tech communication with modeling, soft questioning, and a partner-assisted scanning, child will. Boom. What is it that you want them to do? And so it seems like a lot, and maybe in certain situations, like I wouldn't do book reading with modeling because they're doing the reading. So I might leave something out, but right. if I'm expecting them to be having a discussion with or communicating with a partner with their device, I would have that all in there. So, do you want to say anything before I move on?
No, ma'am.
You gave me control of the mouse, so sometimes you have to slow me down. So I added these today because I'm like, oh my gosh, we haven't done accommodations. Wait time. It needs to be written in the IEP, and you as parents can understand better how long it can take your kiddo. I have some kids that are like 20 to 30 seconds sometimes, and other times they're like 1 second, right? And I'm going to pad that because I don't want anybody giving up after 10 seconds and kind of saying, oh, they don't know it. Because as we said in a webinar before, and we say this many times, kids know who's going to wait for them and who isn't. And if you're not going to wait for them, they're going to say, why should I bother? Right. So that wait time makes a difference. I have a kiddo who is not new to me, but is new to this teacher. I want to anoint her as Teacher of the Year. But we sat and talked about how to include her in her classroom. And she had so many great ideas. I had good ideas. We put it back and forth. And one of the things we talked about was maybe you give her the question, walk away, and then come back and let her know you're coming back. And she said, that's really been working great. She's been answering questions for me in the group by me giving her this time to think about it and get an answer together with her one-to-one. And it's been this really successful joining in the classroom. And I told the director, I said, this one's a keeper. This teacher's a keeper. Be nice to her because we want her to stay. Talker, soft tech communication all the time. That this isn't when they feel like having that out for them. This is that they should have it all the time. If they're in gym, it's going to be soft tech. If they're on the playground, soft tech. They're in the classroom, they should have their talkers. And they can turn it down, but they can't turn it off. Because the minute you do that, you take away their voice. And then you encourage behavior. Mm-hmm. Encourage them to fuss or have something, go, to get your attention, and we can't blame them. Yes, no, you're using partner-assisted scan. You're giving them 2 choices when they're younger, 3 choices. You go through each of the choices. You ask them yes, no. That's a very low motor output demand, very high cognitive demand. If it's a right-wrong question, it's not on the device. You can open up the device and you can say, what do you think about this character? And they may get stuck because they don't quite know where to go. And you say, well, you need to tell me. Do you have something positive to say about it or negative to say about this character? If they say positive, you can go to their good descriptors and then they can pick whatever they want. But the device is for communication. It's not for grill and drill. And the minute you start, it's really hard for me when I see a 20-year-old, 24-year-old, 20 that's had a device for a while, and now I'm going to be their person, right? And I'm going to be working on writing and reading. It's very hard for me because they have had years of being told to find things, and they look at that device with terror. And the minute I start modeling and getting goofy, you can slowly over time see them start to relax into it and start to use their device. But it's not overnight.
No.
Because the damage has been done for many years. And so in that IEP, you have to spell this out and let them know what that means. That modeling on the device is mandatory. That if you had a deaf kid in your class, you'd have a signer there signing to them all the time so they could learn their language. Explain that it's the same about a device. Nobody, oh, you raised your hand, Jeanette. What do you want to ask us?
Unmute yourself.
This may be a long-winded answer. I mean, all the nerves in my body just like, I have so much anxiety over what you just said. Modeling is a must, and I absolutely agree. I don't believe that it happens. It took me over a year to feel fluent in TD Snap, and they've got Tiana for a year at a time. Thankfully, she just transitioned into a new school, and she'll be there for 3 years. But how do you...
I agree with that. Let me get to the last point, and we'll cover that. All right? Adapted books for access to reading. They need to have what they need to be able to learn to read and write, which would include adapted books. This is the one academic thing that we put on their devices, is books for them to read. Eventually, they're going to be off the device, and they're going to be doing them on, on an iPad, reading on VoiceStream. But in the beginning, they need to have that language wrapped around the book. And actually, in the very beginning, like I do 2-year-olds on my books, because they need to play with books like every other 2-year-old does. Turn the pages, not turn the pages, look at the pictures, not look at the words, look at the words and move around and just, chat. And that's what kids do. I mean, I'm lucky I have grandkids, and I've been watching them when they first pick up a book. And how do I emulate that? I put an easy book adapted on the device, and they go to town, and we have a blast. They need the flip books for writing. We don't ignore the fact that they're going to write. We don't let the OT write writing goals. I had that in one of my IEPs recently, and the OT said to me, "No writing goals?" I said, "No." She goes, "Oh, thank the Lord, I couldn't figure out how I was going to do this." So she had written a goal, had no idea how she was going to meet it, but that was a goal that she's supposed to write, right? I get it. Because we kind of flip the whole OT thing upside down when you don't have hand use, right? They need access to the curriculum that's being handed to everybody else in the classroom because they can access it. Our kids need cards. They need educational videos. They need a whiteboard. They need a one-to-one sitting next to them, bringing the curriculum to them so they are a part of things. Kids end up in classrooms, even SPED classrooms, where they're included in that SPED classroom by geography.
Exactly.
They're not asked a question. They're not asked to produce anything. And to me, that's a crime. That's not educating them. That's housing them. We don't need to house them. We need to educate them. I think in accommodations, you need to put training for staff. Staff needs to be trained. If you've got them on TD Snap, everybody in that school, that's anybody interacting with her on a device, puts the free version on an iPad, puts the free version on their computer. They don't need it to talk. They know what the things say. They need to know where they're located. And that's got to be a part of what goes on for our kids, because you wouldn't send somebody in for a deaf student that knew 3 signs. Nobody would do that. They hire a trained signer, right? But somehow when it gets to AAC, it's like they think if you just put the device in front of them, they're going to know what to do. And so I challenge, anytime I'm doing a training, I challenge them to sit down and tell me a sentence. And they're like, "Well, I don't know where anything is." I said, "Well, welcome to the club. Your kiddo doesn't either."
Right.
So, and you can read, and you have good motor planning, and you can use your fingers. Now I want you to try with your eyes. So I just feel like that's such a necessary piece. They need to be trained on partner-assisted scan. They need adaptations for books and flip books, and they need to know how to use them. There's no excuse in my mind, and this is not just because I co-founded Rett University. There is no excuse for people not taking a 40-minute course on any of these things. Half the things we're talking about here, there are free webinars for.
Exactly.
If you come to your IEP manned with the website link to each of those free courses that apply to your kid.
Yeah. You email me and I will send you the new family information sheet that literally has the ones that we suggest with all the websites and everything else there. And if you go underneath our website, if you go under the new family, literally there's a thing that says, are you a teacher or educator? And it literally tells you what courses, it is laid out in a very, very pretty page for you that tells you where to go. So it is all there.
We worked really hard on this to organize our website so it's less overwhelming and it guides people through the process. But it is really kind of amazing to me that people think they're going to walk into a classroom with a kid this complex and not get training. Now, I will say that I am the beneficiary of like 5 schools right at this point, which is a lot, that have actually contracted with me, not just to do training, but to work side by side with the teachers and the student. That is an amazing difference in these kids making progress. I used to do a 2-day brain dump at the beginning of the year, come back at the end of the year and go, oh my gosh, they didn't really listen to me. It's not that they don't listen, it's that we are changing, we are shifting everything for them. And they need to be reminded and brought along because the educational system is not training them to teach kids with Rett.
No.
Or any kid with complex disabilities, they're not.
When I went to the college, through the College of Special Education as a new teacher in the I'm really dating myself, the late 90s, early 2000s, the very simple fact is I was in one of my classes and mentioned Rett syndrome, and one of my professors says, that's not a real thing.
Okay.
And I went, yes, I'm sorry it is, because here's my sister and she has it. So please don't tell me. And they were like, well, we don't talk about that. And when I was an intern supervising teacher up until I left the district. And I would ask my interns every year, what were you taught about complex needs? And they're like,
nothing.
So that was just in 2018. They are not teaching about what to do with our complex kids.
Well, and that's why I started Rett University, is because I was teaching at the graduate level and I couldn't get them to listen to me about what we needed to teach. Like they have to write a 100-page paper. I'm saying they're never going to be authors. They're not going to be, I don't know. That's not their thing. We're not training them to be authors. We're training them to be teachers. Can I take that 1 hour and teach a complex disability course? Can I take that 1 hour and, as it was, my tech course included a case study of complex kids and they had to design curriculum with technology for it. I had that at least. But the reality is that's not happening in most universities. And so we can't fault the teachers. We can fault the higher ups that are considering what should be taught in a university, which is a whole political thing, which is horrible. All right. How about you?
I definitely think utilizing those resources, Jeanette, sharing them with the service providers for your daughter, to make sure that they are going over those videos. Maybe you guys are checking in at conferences to see how the modeling is going. You share what's working for you at home. Maybe you're able to model for them during those conferences, can help bridge the gap. And you can check in real time to see how the modeling is working and how your daughter's engaging with them. Because we put a lot of trust in these people.
You're in the classroom right now. If a parent came and said to you, can I come in and model how my daughter uses her device? Would that be allowed? Or would you do it? You would do it, but would that be allowed?
Well, yeah. So I think that we would set up a meeting time and when it did not interfere with instruction or classroom time. And I would absolutely be open and probably invite other related services providers. So I would invite OT and the SLP to come in and look at how the modeling works. Now, from an intervention specialist lens, I probably maybe will think that some of the ways that a parent models is not the way that I would model, or I would have I would shift a couple of things but you definitely want to collaborate to see what's really working and figure out your instruction style, a parent's modeling style, and how to get that to come together. Because it's not going to work if a teacher is just doing it in a very meticulous way that is not going with the flow or feels very conversational, or is very rigid, like Susan was talking about assessments. If it's very rigid, it's going to be hard to follow the modeling. So parents are usually more relaxed and more comfortable being conversational with their kids. Like, oh wow, I totally felt so hungry today at work, and you're just moving through and describing things and chatting. But sometimes teachers, we are really taught to be teachers. We are not really taught to relax, to be personal with kids. We are really taught to like make sure that we're meeting our IEP minutes, that we're tracking our data, that we are professional at all times. But I think that with kids with significant exceptionalities, there is a different line between what is professional and what is actually meeting a child's needs. And so it doesn't always look super rigid. Sometimes it is. I'm being very relaxed and having a regular conversation, and I'm saying, I had spicy food, yeah, and now I'm super tired and I'm ready to go home. And that is what you would be talking about at home, and we're modeling that at school. So when they read a book and a character is talking about the same thing, all of those things are interconnected and increases comprehension. But if a teacher is very rigid in one way, that comprehension is not gonna build in the same way across environments, which is what we really want. In the school environment and in the home environment, we want kids to be able to build those connections in the same way. And it takes a lot of advocating on your end, and it takes a lot of pushing on your end to make sure that you know your child best, and you're sharing what you know, and you have resources. And hey, there's nothing wrong with saying, I know some resources that you can benefit from. Your district hasn't paid $1 billion for it, so it's even better. Why don't you check out this free link,
Right. And the nice thing too with TD Snap, I mean, one of my very favorite things is that search button and being able to search for things. And what I always tell my teachers, because we do have teachers who are only with our kids for 1 year, and they're like, it's so much to learn. It is. I'm 5 years into doing Rett U, and I still use the search button. It is not perfect, but what I have taught is I say to my girls, Courtney's got to I got to find the search button. I can't remember where it is right now, or I can't. And I teach my girls it's okay to make mistakes, because I don't know if Tiana's like the rest of my girls, but most of my girls hate to make mistakes because they know how smart they are, and they don't want to make mistakes because then that makes them seem like they're not smart. And so they're little perfectionists. I jokingly say that Rett has a perfectionist symptom, but so I make mistakes. I search for it and I make mistakes, and I go, oh my gosh, Miss Courtney can't find it. And I make a joke out of it. And that's helped me learn how to find words faster on the device. And the fact that it shows it, I literally will do it with them. And then I'll go, hey, let's do it one more time. And I'll do the search, function. I'll do the repeat the narration. Thank you. Follow the trail again. And that way they've gotten it twice and I've gotten it twice. And it's helped me remember where that is. So, letting them know that they don't have to be perfect. Because I think Olivia's right. As teachers, we're afraid not to be perfect. And I'm like, with my girls, I need you to show them that you are human and you're going to make mistakes. And that it's okay for them to make mistakes with you. It creates trust with our girls too.
Okay. So are you ready to move on?
We are.
Okay. I just want to make sure before I keep going. So we talked about SMART goals, right? At the very beginning, the first part. So one of the R is realistic goals. And I think that parents need to police this at the IEP meetings. You see a goal that says, which I've had at an IEP meeting, this was the OT, I could have shot her, that she is going to make a comment to her peer within 5 seconds. After that peer says something, she's going to answer her within 5 seconds. And I went, who wrote this goal? And the OT kind of went like this, and I went, okay, I think we can keep this one if you assure me you're curing the Rett, because I have never seen anybody respond to anybody in 5 seconds the way you're wanting her to. And so I think that you know what's realistic as a parent, and you know what is impossible with Rett to do, and they don't. A lot of times they don't. They have no idea. If it's the first time they've seen a kid with Rett, they don't. So I think that that's important for us to say, I don't really want you to waste your time on this because this goal is not realistic. Let's think of something that she would be able to do and figure out how we're going to make it work. You have a right to say those things, and you probably, Jeanette, at this point, and other parents I know, they know more than a lot of these people do when they're first walking in and seeing your kid.
Right.
How do we know that goals aren't too easy or too hard? But I will tell you that if people aren't giving you a good present level of what they're doing, they shouldn't be writing goals.
Your present level should not be 3 sentences. I just was looking at an IEP, and the present level for academics was literally a few sentences. And I'm like, how? I can't even tell you. Like, I said, if I'm a stranger, and I know this kid, but I read it like a stranger, I'm like, I would have no idea. I would presume that this child maybe had Down syndrome or, maybe something else. Like, would not have known Rett syndrome or how to work with this child whatsoever or where they were actually at.
Right. And so present levels are more than just they can read these sight words. I think present levels should definitely put in some what is it that they can do in different areas, but how do they do it? How do I get them to do this thing that I say they can do? Because and that is instructional strategies, but without that information, how can the next person replicate where this kiddo is and move on? It's impossible. How do we set goals that are not too overwhelming? I always say, who wants to have an IEP that has, 20 goals on it? I sure don't, because I'm going to spend more time measuring the darn things than I am teaching. And that's not what we're all about. And I think that parents tend to advocate for this because they feel that's how they can hold the school accountable. But what they don't understand is in the process of trying to hold them accountable, you have made their life a living hell because they can't teach your kid. And they are constantly having to take data. So I think there has to be a balance. I think that an IEP team and parents both have to decide what are the main things I want my kid to be able to learn to do. A lot of our parents might be effective, just them being Rett parents, are wanting their kids to read, to write, to be able to sound things out. They want them to be conversational, and they don't really care if they do math. If they do math, it's fine. There's a few here and there. But they don't want 15, 20 goals of these little picky uni things like follows directions. When we say stand up, they'll stand up if they can walk. That's not really life-changing for our kiddos. It is life-changing for them. I have a young lady right now. We just had this really hard discussion. Her sister is going off to college. They took a week off. They went all over the East Coast looking at colleges that have volleyball teams that have architecture, which is what she wants to do. Here's my Juliana, who is graduating also this year, watching all of this. And I said to her, we were talking about a book, and in the story we were reading, this person was being made to be something that she really wasn't to fit in. And this girl said, I know what it's like to try and fit in. And she looked really, really sad. And I said, I just have a question. Can I ask you a question? I said, is it hard for you to see Olivia going off to college and you're not? And her eyes got so big, and she got to that yes so much, and she started, welling up a bit. And I said, it is okay to be happy for your sister and feel sad for yourself. Now, if she didn't write and couldn't write, I never would have even had a hint of what this was about, right? And so in my mind, if I'm going to set a goal, I'm going to set goals that have lifelong effect.
Exactly.
That really will sustain you throughout your life. And if I'm aiming for writing, then I know what falls under that so I can get there. Whether she can stand up when I say stand up is not life-changing in my mind at all. Now, if a kiddo's walking, I'm going to keep them walking because less assist means you have more opportunities for adult programming. That has lifelong effects. But when we set goals, we want to set goals that are not just realistic, but that are relevant, that are really relevant to their life.
I had a goal for one of our girls that was, well, identify safety signs.
Oh, Lord.
And I said, the simple fact of the matter is, our children are unfortunately reliant on adults for all things. I mean, even if they are mobile, they are reliant on us because of safety, because their hands do not work. I'm like, so them...
And also, they can't make themselves stop once they're walking.
Exactly.
Unless they have an apraxic moment. If they have an apraxic moment, they can stop. But they can't necessarily stop on command.
And so...
Right?
How is having safety signs when they're always going to have an adult with them to identify and do this that has no bearing on their life whatsoever? And one person tried to argue, and I was like, unless they cure Rett right now, this is completely and totally asinine. There's no other way to say it.
And the other important thing is, how do we make them measurable? I think this is a perfect thing for parents to take on, because if you can't, when you read the goal, picture how the child is going to do it, then it's not measurable. Right. They're not using language that helps you see the process. And so if you can't see how they're doing it or understand how they're doing it, maybe we have shortcuts, educational teacher talk shortcuts. But if you can't, that means it's not measurable. You've got to be able to see it in your mind, what they're going to do.
And understanding that it can be a time period too, because I think, like, especially with writing, I've had teachers get stuck in 3 out of 4 times. And I'm like, that's not, how about over a 2-week period, they're going to complete this writing activity over a 2-week period or over a 3-week period, and it's going to
constrained,
right?
Still time constrained, but what you're saying is we actually want them to finish it,
right?
Not in 2 to 3 out of their writing things. I mean, that way they would get nothing done, right? Right. All right. So I'm just conscious of time, so I'll speed up here. You want to take this one?
How can we get the Rett U communication sessions covered and added to an IEP? Well, that goes back to listening to those accommodations as they're needing training. One of the very first things I usually ask when I go into an IEP meeting, and I think Susan does the same thing, is how many children have you taught with Rett to read and write? And 9 times out of I have not met yet a teacher who has done that. And so if they are not trained and know how to work with our children, and they are treating our children as autistic, then this is not going to be a successful place for them. So that's where I add that.
And we're not going to guarantee that as being the end all be all, but a lot of times when you ask that question and you write goals a way that they couldn't possibly meet because they don't know how to do it, they accept the goals.
They have to get some kind of training.
And I will tell you that typically what I do is I send my parents into the administrator that controls the purse outside the IEP meeting. Have a discussion where that person isn't going to be shamed by me or anybody else, but that doesn't have to, in front of everybody, make this decision, right? That oftentimes those little sidebars can help. They have to come back with the whole group. But, things like, can you do us a favor and just go back and talk to your staff and find out how confident they feel in meeting these goals? We don't have to talk about it here. You guys, I would like you to go and discuss that without us here. That can't be comfortable. And then you'll come to a decision that makes sense, because it's hard to hack that in an IEP meeting. Because I'll tell you, administrators, I literally was in this meeting that just about made me scream. Because what we suggested at the beginning, the principal argued us for an hour and a half, and after the hour and a half gave us what we wanted. But he had to be the one to make it his idea. That's just ego junk, right? I was like, I felt bad for the parents because they paid for the advocate and me to be there that whole time while he's trying to, prove what a big man he is. And we are in Louisiana, so I understand things operate a little differently in Louisiana than they do other places. But the reality was, he wasted people's time and money because of his ego. But did we get what we want? We got what we wanted. But that makes me uncomfortable for parents. That makes me uncomfortable that we've got this guy to deal with from now on. We kind of know what to do. We feed him the idea before the meeting and let him say it. That would be the thing to do, I guess. But it is harder. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm finding it more schools willing to hire us
I am too.
than ever before.
Yeah.
Right?
We're
That
getting
doesn't mean it's generic,
right.
but it's more.
We're
I
getting
have like
yeah.
5 school contracts.
And
That's
I've gotten three of my kiddos have their school has reached out to me. Parents have signed we can talk, and I've gotten 3 emails this week about when can we catch up and talk about how we can do this and how we can
right.
And I think what's happening is the teachers are, because what I have found, and Susan, I think you'll agree with me, when I've gone into schools to train, the teachers want the information. They are begging for the information. I would say 9 times out of 10, we have willing to learns. We do not very often, very, very, very rarely, we come with in know-it-alls. But 9 times out of 10, we have willing to learns who are like, I know she's in there. I know she's smart. I need help because I don't know how to get it out. And
the other thing that you can do that stands on your side, if they keep saying that the child's making no progress, and you have other places where she has made progress, is you can say, listen, I think your teachers want kids to succeed. I don't think teachers go into teaching for the notoriety. We don't go into teaching for the money. I think we go into teaching because we actually want to help kids. And when they can't help kids is when they get kind of nasty sometimes because they feel defeated or they can't feel successful. And that's where they get backed up. But if you can get in and help them, they're usually really happy about it. So if there's no progress over time, then you have to sit down with the team and say, there's no progress here. And that's not what I'm hearing from this kiddo, or that's not what I'm seeing from this kiddo doing this, or I'm seeing this over here. And we have to figure out how to help that, have that happen for my kid. I mean, that's realistic. We have enough now data on kids making progress between all of us that are working with kids with Rett that we could stand up in a court of law and we could speak to that. If we were in a due process, which I have been many times, I could stand up and go through here's this kid doing this kid doing this kid doing this. So I think it's really important that we know that.
Right.
We know that. All right, go ahead.
We've got, somebody asked about special circumstance instructional assistance, which, if I was reading correctly, is asking for extra support in the classroom. I think was what I read correctly. That is definitely it. There are so many areas that our kids qualify for a communication partner, an extra person in the classroom. First and foremost, safety. I'm in a situation where one of my girls has already fallen twice this year.
And also, how are they going to access the curriculum? That is a key issue.
Access.
That's straight out of every child. What is that?
No child left behind.
No child left behind. How do they access the curriculum?
Right.
And that's also if we keep our SPED department, if we keep our education department, is the whole idea of how do we make access?
Right.
Tell me how she's going to access it. How will my daughter be part of a group if she doesn't have someone there to model for her? How will my daughter be able to blah, blah, blah if she doesn't have somebody to help her produce the answer and then give it to the group? So there are ways to ask questions versus just walking in and saying my daughter has to have somebody.
Right.
How are you going to assure me that my daughter isn't going to fall down? How are you going to assure me in this classroom that as kids with autism, my kid isn't going to be attacked and she has no protective responses?
Right.
I mean, those are all legitimate questions and legitimate situations that we find our kids in. So, yeah.
Okay, so Susan, it's 8:45. I know that
We got to get going.
We got to get going. We have some more questions to answer. So what we can do is, if it is okay with you all, Susan and I, Olivia and Lizzie, will go through and do a quick answer of the rest of these, and we will put them out as an extra part of the web chat on our website. I know Susan and I are both completely stacked right now, and Lizzie and Olivia both just went back to school, so it might be a little bit longer than a week, But if you guys can give us some patience, we can get those questions answered. And I know we actually, from tonight's, we had some more questions be asked, so we can include those, and we'll do a third video that we can put up on our webpage, if that's okay.
Who would have thought that IEPs would have been such powerful questions, but they are such the bane of everybody's existence, right?
Yes.
So here's where the I is in IEP, and usually these handouts go up on the YouTube, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So you all can read this to yourself, but we do have to remember there's an I in the IEP, which means it's for your kid. It shouldn't be a boilerplate that looks like everybody else's IEP in the classroom.
Right.
And I love one.
If they can't learn the way we teach the way they learn. And
how ironic that this is from Ivar Lovas, who is this discrete trial training guy who teaches exactly one way. I just find that to be rather ironic. I'm just saying.
But it's something, it's funny, and I will be very short on this. I was always a troublemaker in my district because I didn't teach the way the curriculum said. I didn't teach the way that they said they should. I taught the way that my students learned. And after I was trained by Susan, I really incorporated a lot of that stuff. And I loved watching my kids grow and learn. And I am a true believer, and I watch all of our clients, I watch them learn and grow on a daily basis, and it's so amazing. So, reminder, our students deserve to learn. Our students can learn, and our students learn differently, but they can do it with supports. And I always tell my kiddos, they're smart and they're capable and they can do anything. And they're going to take over the world one day.
All right. So if you need support, there we all are back there. Anything that you want to know about besides IEPs, because I think we're kind of tapped out there, but no, send your questions and we'll try to address them a different way than on webinar night.
And Olivia, we're going to add you. We forgot. I apologize. That was my fault.
Oh, you didn't add me again?
We didn't add you. We're going to add you.
You would think that we're like too busy or something. I don't know what the issue is.
I've literally been at my desk and not moved out of this chair since 9 o'clock this morning. I want my jammies.
We will promise it'll be on there next time. We were very gifted, very lucky to get Olivia to join us because she is amazing. She worked with one of my kiddos as her teacher for 2 years and just soaked it all in and said that, if she ever decided to leave her district, that she could come for us. So we're kind of pulling her out a little bit at a time there. So we're just really thrilled to have her. And, we're building because the need is so great and we can't keep, I feel really badly to have waiting lists for people, so we're not going to have to do that.
Yeah,
no, and Susan, we now have a speech therapist that knows what she's doing, which is like huge, because that's a huge wall to run into in many arenas.
It's very hard in the district to work with an SOP with a kiddo that has Rett. But I will say that when you're super passionate about student success and achievement, you figure out a way. You're collaborative to find out what works. And every small step forward is a feel good for you, for the parents, for the kiddo. And that's what keeps you going. And it is harder to do when you're under the constraints of a bell schedule, and IEP minutes that restrict you in the classroom under what you're taught in college without other training and outside knowledge. Exactly. So I am very, very grateful to Rett U for teaching me what I've learned, because I have become a better teacher. I have become a better teacher to all kids, but especially those with Rett, because I get that it's not my time, it's really their time. It's how we can work together. It's how we can model. It's how we can relax and chat and be patient. And it is not bam, 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 we got to do it because we have to do it, and that's our timeline. So I appreciate you, Susan. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody. Any questions, just send them on. All right? And if you could just make about 3 more hours in each day, we'd be grateful. All right.
Agreed.
Bye. Bye. Bye.